Hello everyone, I'm Said. In this video, we are going to talk about gRPC and how we can use it in ASP.NET Core API. gRPC is a very good way for communicating between backend to backend systems, or in microservices architecture is a very good way for communicating between two microservices. Still, gRPC is not supported by the browsers, but there is some workaround for the gRPC-Web that maybe in future we can use it in the browsers as well. But now we are going to use it in the microservices architecture. The scenario is we have one API and we are going to add one gRPC server and then one gRPC SDK. So the API is using the SDK for communicating with the gRPC server. Here we have one API that is the template for weather or forecast API. Nothing here, very straightforward. We have one API for weather forecast, correct? So let's add gRPC server step by step. I want to talk about in detail about the gRPC and how we can use it. First of all, I have a question. What do you think about the G in gRPC? If you think G is Google, it's not correct. gRPC means General Remote Procedure Call that made by Google. But most of developers think that G in gRPC means Google, which is not. Okay, just I wanted to clarify this one. So let's add our gRPC server here. In the Visual Studio, there is one template, ASP.NET Core gRPC service. We can choose that one and let's call it gRPC on ASP.NET.Server. We are going to put it in a src folder using .NET 8 and done. Let's check what we have in this template. We have a folder, protos, and also services. gRPC is using protocol buffer, which are using the protobuf as a serialization. Actually, this is one of the most important things about the gRPC, that is using protobuf. Usually in HTTP, we are using JSON or XML for response, for request. So that JSON takes more size when you are serializing response. I have another video for checking 6 serializers in C#. You can check it. That's really interesting for knowing the difference between the serializers in C#. But now gRPC by default is using protobuf. When you are using protobuf, every serializing response or result turns to the bytes. So it's more compact. What's the point here? The point is when you are sending something over the network, it takes less bandwidth of your network so that it's better and more efficient. So here, protos contains one proto. Proto is a contract for the gRPC. gRPC only knows about the proto files. So you need to put every logic in the proto files. So for example, here in the greet proto, we have one service, greeter, message, and the RPC. If we want to check or compare with the normal classes or types in C#, service is like an interface in the .NET world, okay? RPC is a method. Actually, this is a remote procedure call. The remote procedure call, it means instead of calling the API, it will call a remote method and will trigger another part of the server, another server, and then it will work with methods instead of APIs, right? So here, this RPC is the method name. This is the input parameter, and response is hello reply, for example, here. You can specify what is response for this method. And message is the class records, everything in the C#. Keep in mind that using this proto, gRPC at runtime will turn this proto to a C# class at build. When you are building the project, it will turn this proto to a C# class. So for example, this greeter proto will convert to this greeter service. So if I open this greeter service, you can see there is a method, say hello, the request is hello request. And if I want to open this class, you can see that this is auto-generated by protocol buffer compiler. don't edit. And when you build the project, protocol buffer will generate this class for you. For example, if I add another property here, I call it family. We need to change the order. And if I build the project again, okay, it's build, you can see in the request.family. I just add another property in the proto file, but here you can see it's auto-generated by gRPC. Let me just remove this one again after we can change this model. Let's a little talk about this one. In the protobuf, every properties needs an index. Actually, this is for serializing request and response in the protobuf. That's the reason for having these orders, because protobuf, when try to serialize a model, it will use these indexes for serializing and deserializing the model, because the output of the serialization in protobuf is bytes. Okay. And then it only uses these indexes to compress the output, not using the property names. For example, in JSON is human readable because it's trying to say, okay, this is the name property, this is the value, like key value. But here is different. So you need to keep in mind that when you are trying to design your models, you need to take care of this index. For example, if you are trying to add index 1 for name, it should not be changed in future. If you change it, it means there is a possibility for mixing or not able to serialize the old messages. So for example, if you are string name here and you change the type, maybe there is one old string message that sending to your gRPC server, and then it tries to deserialize it based on this index, but the type is mismatched and maybe through exception. Okay, I want to keep it simple in this video. If you want to deep dive in the gRPC and how it works, what is the architecture of the gRPC and also the protobuf, leave a comment for me. I can create another video for it only for the gRPC and how it works. Okay. So now we have the server. Let's check the program CS as well. So here we have the add gRPC. In this one, we can also put some configuration here. We have the add gRPC, which we can pass also some options. Let's see what we have here. So for example, I always try to enable detailed errors, because it's useful during your development. If there is some exception thrown by the gRPC, you can see the detail of that error. And also you can see the other options here, like max and message size, compression provider. By default is using protobuf, but you can also set another provider for the compression, received message size. That's it for the configuration. Also, ignore unknown services. I told you that gRPC is based on the methods, but maybe the caller that trying to call your gRPC server, maybe it's trying to send some method name that doesn't exist in your gRPC server. So if you try to ignore those services, it just bypass it and not throwing any exception or not found. Okay, I think it's better to keep it as false. So if someone try to call some method that you're not implemented, let throw exception as not implemented error. For the gRPC service, here is the map gRPC for knowing the class, the server that is calling your methods as a remote procedure call. That's it. I think we can run this server here. That's our gRPC server. So let's try to add SDK, because as I said, it's not possible for directly calling the gRPC methods from the browser. We need to have an SDK to say to other APIs or projects in our microservices, this is our contract. You can call our SDK to communicating with the gRPC server. So I'm going to add only class library for gRPC SDK. So let's call it net.sdk. Here, src. Just I wanted to add one point here. If I open the CS project, we have protobuf and it's pointing to our proto file. But here we are specifying the gRPC services, the type is server, right? And also here, gRPC.ASP.NET Core, which is include everything we want on the server side. But in the client side, because we are using the class library, we need to add few NuGet packages for creating our SDK. Okay, let me go to the manage NuGet packages. The first one is Google protobuf, which is the main one for using the gRPC, using the protobuf for serializing requests and response. So just I think we need to, yeah, this is the latest stable version. Let's install it. Okay, fine. Another package is grpc.net.client, because this project is our gRPC client. So we need to add this package as well. Okay, fine, installed. Also, another important one is grpc.tools. This package is responsible for converting our proto file to the C# classes. So let's install it as well. Okay. And the last one is this class, grpc.net.client factory. This is very useful NuGet package that I didn't see among developers that using this one. It's helping us for registering the gRPC server when we want to implement our client side as SDK. Later on, I will show you how to use this package. So just let's install it. Okay, done. Just let's check this one. Okay, we are all set. We already added all the required NuGet packages to our gRPC SDK. The only things that remains is adding proto file, because this proto file is a contract between gRPC server and gRPC client, right? I already checked lots of the courses and the content on internet. They are saying that you need to copy this proto file to your client, and then actually you are duplicating the proto file, which is not good. I don't like it, because every time that you are changing something on the proto file, you need to add these changes to the client side as well. So that's not good. What we can do here, we can actually copy this line on the gRPC server CS project. And then just we need to say to the .NET runtime, when we are compiling the project, we need to point to gRPC server file. If I want to just copy the name and then paste it here, it will go and then get the proto file from server project. Done. So we have centralized the proto, and actually maybe there is another solution, creating a common project and then add this proto file there, but that's good for now. Here also, this is the server. We need to change it to the client because we are on client side, and then when they want to compile the proto file, it will generate those methods for our client as well. If I build the project here, let's see what we have. Okay, project is built. Now if I go to this class, just to check if that greeter service is generated, we can say yes, we have it. And also, yeah, this is the greeter client that gRPC generated for us, right? Very nice. So now let's add our logic for using the gRPC server. I want to remove this class and add another class here for service collection extension. We need this file for adding an extension method on iService collection. For, when we are trying to expose some services to another projects like API or another projects, it's better to have this service collection extension, put all your logic when you want to add your services to the dependency injection. The other side, they only need to call one method. So this extension class should be static and then public static void Let me call it add gRPC.SDK. And then we are trying to put this extension method on iService collection. Services. This services has a method called add gRPC client. This method coming from that .NET package for client factory. And we can say this is our greeter gRPC client, and then just add it to the dependency injection. Actually, behind the scenes, they are adding HTTP client factory for us. They are using HTTP client for calling the server, the gRPC server, for sending requests and getting response. So we need to pass our server address. So we can say client.address here, new URI. What is our server address? We can get it from launch setting. This is our gRPC server URL. Just put it here. Done. Also, using this client factory, you can put your fully retry policy. That's really nice. I really like this client factory NuGet package. So another point here, we are exposing a service to another project, which is API here. There is two ways. One way is directly calling this greeter client from the API, or we add another wrapper on this greeter client and then expose that service to the API, which is better, I think. Because keep in mind that every time that you change proto file, this file is auto-generated. So once you build the project, all these methods will be changed, and then maybe you are breaking the API because they are directly using the greeter client. So here I'm going to add a kind of decorator service to call gRPC client methods. So let's call it iGreeter gRPC service. And here we can say task.say hello async. This is our method that already we have it in the gRPC server. This is the return, the response, and also request. But it's better to not directly use this kind of model here because they are also auto-generated. So we can simply say a string name as input parameter because that request is only contains a name property. And for sure, we need to use the cancellation token. This is the best practice for using the asynchronous, and we are just going to return one string. This interface will be used by the API. There is no gRPC model, request, response, or the methods from the gRPC client. It's just a simple interface. They don't know how we implement this method, okay? So now if I want to implement this interface, because we already added gRPC client to the dependency injection, so we can get it here. Greeter.client, okay, constructor, and simply we can call that method here. Result, await, gRPC.say hello. Okay. One of the other beauty of the gRPC, in the proto file, we just add RPC say hello. But when gRPC is trying to generate methods for us, automatically it will add the asynchronous method as well, which is recommended to always use asynchronous method. It's really good. You can save your resources, passing the cancellation token, anything. So here we are going to use the say hello async. It accepts hello request. So we can say hello request and then just put a name here and also set the cancellation token. Done. And result.message. Yes, because return type here is string. So done. I think we are calling the gRPC server and getting the response. Another point, what happened if gRPC raised some exceptions? In gRPC server, they are throwing one type of exception called RPC exception. If you want to handle or put try catch in your decorator class, let's put it here. Okay. There is one exception type called RPC exceptions, which is throwing by gRPC-Server. The good point here, always gRPC will set one status code. This status code is different from HTTP status code. Here we have only 5 status code. For example, here, not found. If API or anyone else trying to call one method from the gRPC server that doesn't exist there, it will throw exception, RPC exception, but set the status code to not found. So here you can also handle your response. For example, here you can try to return some empty or null values because this is not found, or put your logic here. Anything you want is in the status code. That's it for the RPC exception. I think we are done here. We add this class, and we also need to put this service into the dependency injection as well. I'm gonna add it as a scope, greeter service. We are all set for the SDK side. So now let's use it in our API project. First of all, we need to add project SDK to the API. Just let me use the gRPC.SDK. And now we can use our extension method at gRPC.SDK. All the API project needs is to call this method for adding all the required things. In real world project, you have lots of other methods or other interfaces to cover all the gRPC stuff. Depends on your project. But now we have only one service. How we can use it in our API? Our minimal API. So simply we can say from services, greater gRPC service and gRPC service. As you know, in the minimal API or any controller action, ASP.NET Pipeline will inject this cancellation token. So we can directly use it here. Let's call it, and what we have, gRPC service.say hello, and accept the name. Let's put gRPC, and yeah, cancellation token as well. Nice. So let's run the project. So because at the same time we need to run the API and the gRPC server, we need to change the properties. Already set to multiple startup project. Let me run. gRPC server is running, and also this Swagger for API. It's try to open the Swagger file. Correct. Let me just make sure gRPC server port is correct. Yep, 7251. Okay, now we got the result, and let me just put it in the console. Just write what we get from gRPC. You can say gRPC result is. That's it. Let's run the project and let's see what we get. This is our Swagger, and also our gRPC server is running, right? Let's call it. Yes, we got 200. And if we check the result here, we can see the gRPC result, hello gRPC. If I put an breakpoint here, and also on server side, call another one. We are here, name is gRPC, and then on server side, we get this request, and then the gRPC server will return the response to our client. Let's call the API. We are here, name gRPC. Okay, sending to the gRPC server. And on server side, and we got the request, name is gRPC. And then just we can see there is another log gRPC. That's it. We could create one SDK for the gRPC server, implement the gRPC server, and also call that SDK from the API. That's the very beginning of using gRPC. I'm going to create another video about the gRPC, like how we can write the unit test, integration test for the gRPC, or any other part of the gRPC in real-world application. If you have any other question, please leave a comment for me. I will review all the comments and create another video based on your request. I think that's enough for now. Thank you for your time. Bye.